Hi, how are you doing, guys?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Great, thanks.
Oh yeah. Um, so tell me about Industry season two because I don't want to. It's always something I'm hesitant to say, but it really does seem like the case. You guys have topped yourself. Season one was great, but it feels like season two. Um, I watched it I think about a month ago almost. It's like white knuckle the entire time, and it really feels like at this point lived in. How does it feel?
It feels great. I mean, it was such a, privilege to be able to do a second season. I think so. You have to kind of, I always have, when I hear things about the sophomore slump and stuff, I think I don't really understand that because I feel like you're given an opportunity to do it again. You have to go back in with everything you've got because it's usually likely you'll never be given a third.
It feels illogical for it to get worse as well because everything that you learn from the first season, you get to diagnose and then you get to literally put it into practice. It's not the metaphor I sometimes use. It's not unlike sports. It's like you get to play a season with a team. You're like, okay, we've got to totally change our formation. We've got to do X, Y, and Z differently, and then you get to do it again. And like, it's that diagnosis process was really exciting for me and Mickey because we were like, oh, we want to make everything better. And we had a really good young cast who improved off a very high base, given that they were more confident coming back for season two. And me and Mickey just became better at writing the show. We knew what the themes of the show. We knew we knew. I mean, we thought the story engine of season one was not big enough to sustain 8 hours of TV. So when we went into breaking season two, we were like, we want to have a very strong narrative, week to week serialized story with proper hooks. And what you said, like keep the pressure and the overall feeling of watching the show very similar to season one. So very adrenalized, very experiential. Every time someone's trading, your heart should be racing at the same time. So hopefully we succeeded.
I want to ask you because you guys were both bankers. I don't imagine it was quite like on the show, but one of the ideas that I keep coming back to, seemingly reinforced by the Atlantic article, but this is a theory that I've been grappling with, is that the world of banking is so ultra competitive and fills you with so much of that. The people I know, at least in the industry, fills you with so much of that, like pleasure, reward, risk, and it's such a high that your show seems to demonstrate that a lot of the characters keep seeking that high when they're not working, whether it's through sex, through drugs, through danger, through sort of experiencing things at that high. Was that like your experience?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, yes. I mean, the people, I think some people are really quick to say there's no way it could be possibly like that. And I feel like obviously it's sensationalized because it's television, but I think it does demonstrate a kind of competitiveness and sort of, a drive that a lot of the people in this industry have. I feel like I think that some people just don't want to sort of accept that there are certain people like this in the world.
Definitely.
And there are loads of them, and there are loads of them in this industry. The thing that you said about the point about like sort of, the drive towards adrenaline and wanting to like hit that button the entire time. I think that's something that we've really explored in season two, because obviously, it's a world which is super adrenalized, frenetic. At work, you're totally focused on your work, and when you get home, you're pretty much thinking about your work as well. And the thing that Konrad always says, which is like Harper in her personal life is trying to hit that dopamine hit button, the same one that she gets through, doing a trade, she gets through sex, she gets through drugs, she gets through the personal relationships. And that's where the coloring in on the show happens.
There's a line in episode 5 where Harper says to Yasmin what she likes about her job, and she says that it's like a perpetual present tense. And the show, when it's in those scenes, you're like, the now is very clearly rendered. It's like you're in it now. You've got 30 seconds to win or lose. It's a very clear. Everything else, why Harper loves all that stuff is it shuts everything. Everything is reduced to simple binary win or loss in the next 30 seconds, which means she doesn't have to contend with the trauma she has. She doesn't have to worry. She doesn't even have to think about where she's going to be in an hour. The present is very alive to her, and that's the thing. It's the same with like if she does a line or if she has a good sexual experience. It's all about being very much present in the now because she doesn't want to deal with the past.
It's interesting to me too that Lena Dunham is at TIFF right now. Her film will be I'm going to be there at the premiere tomorrow. She directed your pilot. so memorably. And also, we had the chance to speak with Jay Duplass for his show, The Chair. And I think he might have actually been in the UK filming your show at the time. He had the hair going on, the blonde hair. I thought that might have been for it. What's it like to have these people that you're bringing in and out of the show?
I mean, on Jay, I mean, he was a lifesaver, really, in some respects, because we wrote that character. We wrote the character as a sort of, as a bombastic hedge fund manager, and obviously because me and Konrad, have been around this kind of people, we thought we could write with a certain degree of authenticity. But at the end of the day, it's still a bombastic hedge fund manager, so it feels a little bit of derivative of other types of that character. And we cast Jay very late in the day. We were trying to find someone to do it, and we never thought we'd get Jay, really, honestly. So when someone mentioned him, we thought, wow, that's really against type. That's very different to what we expected. But then we kind of got obsessed with it. And it all happened very quickly. It happened in the space of a few days almost, where we had approached him and he said yes. I think he had never heard of the show before. He watched the first few episodes. He got into it and he thought, okay, well, I'll do it. And he was coming off the chair then. I think.
Yeah, he was
coming off the chair. And we said, he's the most he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And with zero ego and just the total team player. We were like, he was like, can I go home and see my family first? We were like, not really, because you've got to start shooting on Monday. And he was like, okay, fine, I'll do that.
He was a very, as Mickey says, he was a lifesaver, because we were sort of spinning our wheels a bit on who to cast in that part. And we were getting pretty close to shooting. And he's very, he's just the thing. I guess people do know this about him, but because he's a author, filmmaker, writer, all this stuff, multi-hyphen, whatever phrase you want to use, he's just a world-class actor. And so to actually give him huge scenes, have him play a businessman, me and Mickey write very chewy dialogue, and he just killed it, basically. And he started to carry himself differently, he started to inhabit the character more, he brought a lot of empathy and affability to the character. There's a bit in episode 6 where he has to chew Harper out, but then he basically almost in the same scene has to tell his son that please, can you just make more of an effort with me? And he kind of got that emotional range is fantastic. And I feel like I'm glad, because I feel like it was a really good marriage for character and actor.
And because he's a filmmaker as well, he really wants to understand the character.
Yeah.
So he was sending us emails, we shoot emails back, we discussed the character in depth, we discussed motivation. He was like, I know next to nothing about finance and hedge fund managers, but I just want to understand what's under this guy's skin, what's brought him to London, what's keeping him here. And he was just like that dialogue was really important and almost kind of creating the character as we shot it.
Yeah.
One of the things that you've done this season too is you've kind of streamlined a little bit. There's some characters that were taken out. Get to focus a little bit more on a few of them. Do you have a favorite? Do you guys do you have a rooting interest on the show?
Not really. We love writing for all of them. I think people often say to me who's who in the show. And me and Mickey, and it's not just a sort of it's not an answer we just trot out. They are me and Mickey are in Harper, me and Mickey are in Yasmin, me and Mickey and Robert, me and Mickey are in Gus. And it's a melange of some of Mickey's characteristics, my characteristics, but they're all real composites of either or drawn from people we know. The graduates, I would never they're the 4 young cast members. We would never pick a favorite child, as it were. But I think me and Mickey really enjoy writing for Ken as well, because Ken is he was almost a supporting character in the first season. We realized we had one of the best actors around on our hands. We gave him more to do in season 2. We get to do more seasons. Hopefully, we give him even more to do. He's just an outstanding talent. So for people like us to be able to write dialogue for an actor of that caliber is one of the great honors of doing a show like this.
It's also, they all have very different voices. They've got very different goals. These characters. All their goal is to succeed at Pierpoint universally. But writing for Yasmin is a very different muscle to writing for Harper. Writing for Gus is a very different muscle to writing for Kenny. But it's nice respite to write for one and then put them aside.
Actually, that's a very good point. That's why it's so fun, because it's such a hybrid workplace, and because by nature training for there's so many people from so many different walks of life. We are constantly inhabiting these very different POVs, and that is a lot of fun. And it's very rare now, because we've been writing the show for 6 years almost. In terms of development and stuff, it's very rare that we ever have to have a discussion about what a character would do or say, really, in terms like in terms of me and Mickey's symbiotic kind of view of it. It's like, of course they're going to do this now, or of course they're going to, and it's, the whole process has just been incredibly fun from that point of view.
What do you think about that, with Ken being, I mean, kind of like the villain a little bit in season 1, or villainous? I mean, we're seeing it primarily. Your show it really fascinates me because we're seeing it primarily from the position of mostly Harper, like an outsider, like not being a part of this world. And your point, it's its own universe almost. So we're kind of coming in almost like a character ourselves into the show, and then our perspectives as a viewer maybe shift a little bit about who we can trust and who we can't. Was that by design?
I think that's a really smart point. I feel like actually one of the tricks the show pulls off, I hope, is that it does suggest that Harper is the audience surrogate, and that you've seen the world through her eyes, and you are to a certain extent in the first season because she's an outsider. But then, as Harper, you begin to see underneath Harper's skin, you begin to realize some more of her sort of maybe selfish elements, and you start to realize that she isn't the typical hero in so many ways. I think it's freaked a lot of people out. People think, okay, I'm watching this character, wanting to root for her. I sort of have to see myself in her because she's as alien to this world as I am. Oh, she's behaving pretty reprehensibly. Oh, okay, well that's made me feel kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very intentional.
We write we try and write as ambivalently as possible, and we don't think of the characters as either heroes, anti-heroes, heroes, villains. Like sometimes they act more boldly villainous, like Kenny in season 1. But then in season 2, we were like, look, this is a character that me and Mickey care about and have a lot of tenderness for, and kind of understand some of his behavior. Don't condone it, but understand where it comes from from a place of insecurity. So we're like, in season 2, we'll try and see him battling with that stuff. We always Eric is another really good character because in some ways he's this sort of, super controlling, hair-trigger temper, manipulative, insecure, very fragile male ego, all of this stuff. But on the other hand, he's kind of like, he thinks that he's mentoring Harper correctly. He doesn't see himself as the villain in the story. So we're always writing in a way. We always write from a place of love for the characters, and then let people sort of decide whether I think what's really interesting about people's response to the show is they have it's quite Marmite for a lot of the characters. So some people have very strong, oh, Yasmin's such a villain, or Harper's such a villain. And I think it's quite an interesting mirror held up to people's own affinities and biases and prejudices.
The actors never, the actors are so good at finding the humanity in the characters they're playing as well. None of the actors, get the script and say, okay, well, I'm the villain this season.
Yeah,
they all think, okay, well, I'm going to come to this part from a position of empathy, even if things that their characters are doing could be termed villainous. They're never seeing it like that because that will allow it becomes a caricature.
That's actually a very good point, and the way not even their interpretation, but then the way they play them on screen and how close the camera is and how subjective everything is, you can't help but, even when they're behaving reprehensibly. I think the show does a really good job for a drama of making it feel like you're watching something pretty close to real life, even in the most sensationalized moments, because of the style of the show. It's quite, it has. I would say it has. This is very generalized, but I'd say it has a more indie movie sensibility than, say, a lot of traditional TV. So it does feel like it's sort of ripped from reality, and I think that's actually sometimes why people have such a strong visceral reaction against it, because a lot of the sex scenes, a lot of the drug scenes, they feel kind of like we're putting the viewer directly into them.
Yeah, and the score informs that too. We feel like we're sort of living it at the time. Okay, I got to ask about that then too. Trying to find a way to phrase it. Tell me about the ejaculate.
I did not think that was going to be. No, where's ejaculate? There's a few of them. There's ejaculate in season 1, in episode 2, and there's ejaculate in season 2, episode 4.
Yeah.
Which one?
Which not?
Have you had trouble getting anything in? I mean, HBO and shows in general, you want to show as much as you can. You want it to be real. It's not. You're not. If you made a sanitized version of your show, it wouldn't be.
No, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. But HBO have always been, as a network, they've always pushed the envelope on this stuff, and they've always been at the vanguard of making stuff that feels, real, graphic, not pull any of its punches. I think that's one of the best things about them. And the sex scenes in industry were a very core constituent part when we envisioned the show, of trying to make a sort of experiential young person show, unsanitized, as you say, no edges sanded off, and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's kind of funny and we're laughing about it, but it's also it makes the whole thing a kind of truer and more realistic rendering of those scenes.
I mean, Lena showed Ejaculate on HBO before we did. So
Yeah.
I think the best.
Well, the sex scenes drive the plot too. You know, none of it is
a lot of it. They further it.
Yeah, and also
and they reveal character. I mean, every sex scene. You know, a lot of people think the show's about power, and I think that's, you know, it's a very fair reading of it. And every sex scene is informed by a power dynamic and by someone's own relationship to their sexuality, their power within the workplace, their lack of agency in the workplace, how those things then transfer outside the workplace, how people sometimes want oppositional things. They either want to be subjugated or they want to be empowered through their sex life. All of that stuff is very, I would say, if you go back and watch all of, say, Yasmin's sex scenes or Harper's sex scenes, there is a distinct, and Robert's especially, there's a distinct correlation that tells a story across all of them.
I think we managed to be, I think this is something we wanted to do across the whole show in season 2, was to make it a more subjective experience and allow you to actually make it, you know, to make you feel actually what the character is feeling. And that's from like, the thrill of doing a trade, the way it's filmed, all that stuff informed that desire. In the sex scenes, I feel that they're a lot less objective than they were. They're not just, in the first season they were very stark and they were sort of, you weren't in the character as much as you were. And I think that actually our directors did a really, really good job of making those sex scenes feel a lot more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think in losing some of that objectivity, there's a slightly less gratuitous element to it in season 2, I think. Even though we didn't set out for it to be that way in season 1, I think season 2 actually serves a real narrative function as well as being, salacious and fun.
What do you think that your lead actresses were perhaps lesser known at the time when you were first casting, and sort of have blown up since then, have become much more like, do you feel like you caught lightning in a bottle? Maybe twice.
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, with all of them. Yeah. I think we were, and luck is probably not the right word because it was a rigorous process. We saw lots of people.
Definitely.
And obviously we chose the best, I think. But we feel incredibly privileged to have cast a show with such a young, amazing talent.
Amazing.
I mean, they're just, any of those pieces could have been wrong and it would have thrown the whole show out of whack, and they're all perfect for those roles. It gives us a lot of joy to see them do so well.
Yeah, they routinely blow us away, to be honest. I mean, Harry and David are obviously excellent, but the women as well, they have they have an incredible magnetism to them, an incredible truth. I mean, we very rarely watch takes of theirs where they're not doing something like very interesting. I mean, they all 4 of them, which is really good, is they're very intelligent and they carry themselves with a maturity which is far beyond their years. So they know they came back to the second season, they had a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They, if anything, they up their game. I mean, for the 4 of them, it's a big undertaking. All their names are at the top of the call sheet. They have to lead from the front, and they all. One of the most impressive thing about them, as well as actors, is they're very impressive people as well for such young people.
I've seen all the episodes up until your finale. It's really an interesting season because there's a lot of things that I wasn't expecting to happen. Elements that came in that maybe you put on the back burner or were hiding in plain sight that have come true. So, can you set up a little bit about what's to I actually didn't receive the episode. That's the only reason I didn't watch it. What's something that we can expect coming up in the finale, and sort of, how have you felt about this season as a whole?
I mean, I think the finale, what we wanted to achieve is something we didn't really do in the first season, which is like every cut to black leaves you wanting more of the show in season 2. Whether that's from the music or the last image, that was really important to us. The last 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, without going into too much detail about the last episode, I think the finale is going to blow you away.
Yeah.
If you've liked our first 7, and
so you're a fan of the show.
There are a lot of surprises, should we say?
Yeah, it's the 7 and 8 are the 2 that me and Mickey have been most looking forward to being out in the world, because they feel like you make episodes and episodes and episodes of TV, and sometimes you kind of click into, and you realize you realize what's the right word? a paragon episode of what industry is. I would say Mickey think episode 7 is, and then like that's like the show firing all cylinders, and then 8 has a lot of the juicy interpersonal stuff, the work politics. It kind of brings all those together in a really nice thing. We're both really excited for everybody to see 7 and 8, and then maybe see, who knows, we might get to do another season, but that's not
hopefully. Yeah. Okay, I got one more question. There's so many put downs, comebacks, drop the mic moments, oh snap moments, things like that. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite moment on the show that's like, wow, like just that nailed it?
I really love the end of episode 7 because I love the needle drop. I love Eric's last line. I love the tone of it, and I love the cut to black is just my favorite of the whole season.
Yeah, I love that as well. I also love the ending of episode 3 with talking heads playing.
Yes.
And also I just love the last shot of the whole thing. And
yeah.
The cut to black for that and the music we chose.
It's really good. Yeah. We really, not to pat ourselves on the back, but the cuts to black across all 8 episodes, I think, are really strong. Me and Mickey really, the music choices and where, exactly where the picture cut on all of them, I feel is really kind of leaves you with a good, it leaves you with a very powerful sense of like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I want to do it again. Kind of thing.
You get people hooked, and then they want to come back for more, as it should. It's really impressive. I'm so glad I got a chance to talk with you guys about the show. I do hope it comes back for another season. I'm impressed with the growth on the show. I think it's been, in season 1, I was sort of still discovering it, still figuring it out. And season 2 feels incredibly polished. It feels like you know exactly what you're doing with it, giving time to breathe, the characters to grow. And I think that, as I said, I'm hooked on it.
If your viewing experience was similar to our making experience, and I think like there was a lot of raw, great stuff in the first season, but it needed a level of maturity and a level of, as you say, polish to bring it up to a new level. And I feel like that's fun. I feel like that it's good that it had that kind of nice punky debut season, and me and Mickey are both glad that it sort of stepped up a level into something. And hopefully, if we get to do a 3rd season, we'll dig in exactly the same way and hopefully find a new high level for it again.
Yeah, makes me not want to go into banking. That's for sure.
I
don't know if there is a villain on the show. Maybe it's pure. I don't know if you guys think that.
That's a good point.
That is a good point. We talk about institutionalization a lot of people, and it's a big theme. It's a big theme in Eric's story. It continues to. If we get to do more seasons, it will continue to be a big theme in everybody's story.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have an amazing rest of the festival, and it was such a pleasure talking to you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.